Hi there, Malcolm here with my 179th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my November wrap-up and December TBR for 2023. Gosh, only one more month until the end of the year. So first up, the numbers! So I managed to finish 13 titles in the month of November, totaling 3,153 pages, putting me 8,509 pages above the same time last year, which is rather nice. So it's quite a lot to get through with 13 books, so let's get cracking. So first up is Frey from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe, and the last Buffy the Vampire Slayer book chronologically. This is set at some point in the future where vampires are no more, but demon type things do walk the earth. There is a Slayer, but she doesn't know it, but she uses her strengths to be a thief, basically. However, an unusual Watcher appears and gets her to fight the good fight against a newly encroaching group of vampires. And there we have our story, effectively. Lots of twists and turns in this one, some very likeable characters, and some very bold story decisions made. There's a significant character death, which pulls no punches, I should say. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's, there's nothing familiar from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe, really, apart from the axe from the last series. It's set in a sort of Fifth Element meets Mad Max type post-apocalyptic future setting, which feels really unique and interesting. Technology has advanced, but people haven't. Some really interesting character relationships here. Booktastic. Can't praise this one enough. And the only failing is it starts off a brand new series and then doesn't continue it. Where's book 2? I want it now. After that, I then read Marvel Wastelanders Star-Lord by Sarah Corkwell. This was my book of the month for November. I have done an individual video on this, so I'll leave a link to that below if you want to know what I thought of this one. And when I had finished this, I then moved on to Marvel Select Savage Spider-Man by Joe Kelly. A couple of months ago, I read Non-Stop Spider-Man, really enjoyed it. It ended on a cliffhanger, which I wasn't that enthralled with, because all the Marvel Selects I'd read up to that point were self-contained. Finally managed to get myself hold of a copy. What did I think of it? Massively disappointed, actually. Tonally very different from the first one. I can't really give away too much without spoilers, but as you may have gathered from the front cover, at the end of the first one, Peter Parker is turned into a sort of spider creature, and the story is continued in this book. And a lot of the story just looks like that. Panel after panel of, just what's going on? There is a story in there somewhere, something about racial purity. Baron Zemo meets up with a bunch of other Nazi-type characters, but there was very little relevance to Non-Stop Spider-Man, and I'll say it's worth reading, just so you don't get left on the cliffhanger from Non-Stop, but that's it really. And after that, I then read Marvel Select Deadpool Suicide Kings by Mike Benson. This is my first Deadpool graphic novel. I read the novel Deadpool Pause, which I really enjoyed, so this is the first time I get to see the Merc with a Mouth in graphic novel form. I have seen the 2 films, I love them. And this one brings everything you hope to see in a Deadpool story. Lots of violence, quick one-liners, fourth wall breaks, weird dream sequences, and a litany of other heroes for Deadpool to bounce off of. Deadpool is effectively framed for an explosion he didn't cause. That one explosion he didn't cause. And so he's got to try and clear his name while being hunted by the Punisher, who's wanted to punish him for causing the explosion in the first place. But he also meets up with Daredevil, and the story really picks up when he meets with Spider-Man, who's also known for his quick one-liners. Those two really bounce off each other really well, and the dialogue becomes absolutely hilarious, with poor Daredevil sat in the middle thinking, why have I got to be dealing with these two idiots? This was just so much fun. Booktastic. Now after that, I then read Marvel Select Rocket Raccoon A Chasing Tale. We've actually had this one for a while, but my son had it hidden in his bedroom somewhere. Finally managed to find it. And in a similar sort of vein, Rocket Raccoon is framed for murder he didn't commit. Yeah, that one he didn't kill. And so he's got everyone on the galaxy chasing him down while he's trying to clear his name and find out why people are trying to kill him. And as you'd expect from anything starring a talking raccoon, each page was just non-stop lunacy. I absolutely loved this. Full of insane characters, technology, locations, there's a prison break. The other Guardian members turn up at some point as well, but the primary focus is on Rocket Raccoon. Definitely worth buying. And then after that, I then read Star Wars Kenobi by John Jackson Miller, telling the story of what Obi-Wan Kenobi does once he's landed on Tatooine, handed baby Luke over to his uncle and aunt, and then wandered off into the desert. Now, this is almost, but not quite entirely, unlike the dreadful Disney TV show of the same name. They both have Kenobi in it, and I'm told that most of the cast and crew of that series had read this book as inspiration for the show, but then did what they did anyway. Anyway, we ignore Disney because that's all a bunch of rubbish. Everything they've done Star Wars wise is rubbish, or not Star Wars. And this is the actual story of what happened with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's a small tale. He settles in his little house in the middle of nowhere, and he can't help but get involved in the people that he has to go and buy goods from, etc. And we follow Annalene, a widow with 2 children, who is running a cafe / general store for a community of moisture farmers, and is very much the heart and soul of that community. Unfortunately, like with most moisture farmers, they are plagued by Tusken Raiders or Sand People attacks, and the community themselves have a sort of vigilante militia put together to try and combat or repel any Sand People activity. Of course, there's a lot more going on under the surface than what first appears to be the case, and Obi-Wan finds himself getting dragged into it, because nothing gets people's interests up more than turning up with no past, no story, and wanting to keep to yourself. And we also see things from the point of view of the Sand People themselves, particularly their leader, as they are fighting to survive, having had a series of setbacks and tragedies in their not too distant past. There are some references to other events in the Star Wars saga, something Anakin does in Attack of the Clones, and mentions of Sharad Het and Av-Sharad Het, who come from the comics, a Jedi who turns Tusken, and then his son, who subsequently joins the Jedi Order after his father's death, as chronicled in The Hunt for Aurra Sing. But apart from that, this is very much its own standalone story. There are mentions of an empire or something, but because Tatooine is in the middle of nowhere, the inhabitants don't know or care about what's going on in the wider galaxy. They even refer to the main guy as Chancellor What's-His-Face. Republic credits do as well as anything else. There is no empire. Stormtroopers do pop up once or twice, but they're sort of background furnishings. They don't affect the lives of the people who live there. It doesn't matter who's sitting on a throne. If there is a throne, they still got to work, they still got to live. And so it's really nice seeing everyday life on Tatooine. Big things are happening in the centre of the galaxy, but nobody here cares. I absolutely love this, and I really wish they could have done something closer to this for the TV series. Obviously they could have adapted it a bit, but this would have been a much better story to tell than what we actually got. Booktastic. In the reviews, I did see a mention that, for such a big book, there's not much mention of Obi-Wan Kenobi in it. Well, he's in it a fair bit, but we are following Annalene as the other primary character. Let's just face it, Obi-Wan Kenobi is sitting in his hut meditating and making his hut livable. It's not a particularly exciting story, so we're going to have someone else to make it interesting for him to then be involved. There's only so much you can get up to on your own in a desert, to be honest. This concludes with a very short story called Incognito, which basically just tells the story of Obi-Wan and baby Luke on their way to Tatooine. I think they're just getting off at one stop and getting on another stop to continue their journey. And on the way, Obi-Wan encounters another person who is similarly fleeing the new Empire for different reasons. And these two meet, and decisions have to be made, and sacrifices need to be considered. Quite a nice little tale, quite enjoyed that one as well. And after that, I then read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb to my wife. This is book 1 of the Farseer trilogy. And this follows the illegitimate son of the king-in-waiting as he's dumped on the palace doorstep by the father of his mother, who's just some random peasant in terms of the story, saying, right, done my bit, you look after him now. So of course, not only is there a little bit of royal upheaval about the existence of this child, but there's also the what are we going to do with him now we've got him. It becomes very clear quite early on in the story that young Fitz, as he becomes known as, has certain gifts, particularly when it comes to talking to animals, as well as other sort of Jedi Force push abilities as well. And it's more like a growing up story as he becomes an assassin's apprentice. Hence in the title there, as he's caught up in the machinations and politicking of the king and the rest of the court. Some accept him, some don't, and some are more overtly trying to bump him off. This was a really intriguing tale, quite sad at times. Lad has a habit of befriending little doggies who then get killed. Yeah, so if you can't cope with dog deaths, don't read this one. There's some very hard moments in here if you don't like doggies getting killed. But all in all, really good. There is a sort of ongoing thing with these red ship raiders attacking and causing grief, which does have some influence on the rest of the story, but it's more of a background to Fitz's growing up and other things going on. No doubt the Red Ship Raiders will feature more prominently in the next couple of books. Looking forward to finding out. This is worth buying. And after that, I then read Star Wars Scourge by Jeff Grubb. This is set about 20 years after the events of A New Hope, but to be honest, this could fit in either the Disney Star Wars universe, the normal Star universe. It could be New Republic, Old Republic, High Republic, Low Republic, West or East, or anywhere else. It's very much a standalone story. It's based off of the Star Wars role-playing game Tempest Feud by Wizards of the Coast. I don't know anything about that, but so this is based off of a role-playing game. And so it's very much not attached to anything else. And this, for the most part, is a murder mystery. A Jedi at the beginning of the book is murdered. We witness the murder to a degree, but we don't know how it happened or why it happened. And his master turns up to investigate the cause of the death. He's joined by the bereaved sister of the dead Jedi, and they go on the quest to track down the mastermind behind the killing, and as well as uncover the deeper plot behind what's going on. Yeah, really enjoyed this, actually. I do like a good whodunit. I don't know if it was a good whodunit. I mean, it's pretty obvious from fairly early on who was responsible, because the person you think is supposed to be responsible is too obviously the one you're supposed to think is the one responsible. But the journey was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the characters, the interactions they had, the motivations they had. Yeah, buy it. And as I say, recommended to anybody who enjoys Star Wars at all, whether it's the Disney version, the proper version, or any time period. This does reference the New Jedi Order, it does reference the New Republic, but only in sort of an attempt to place it chronologically in the timeline. But to be honest, that's really irrelevant to the story. Yeah, good stuff. And after that, I then read Aliens Rogue by Ian Edgington. And in this one, there's a space base where there's a mad scientist growing his own aliens for his own agenda, and that's more or less it, really. There's a lot of hallmarks of Nightmare Asylum and The Labyrinth. Both, again, are set in space bases, growing own aliens with mad scientists for their own agendas. And actually, this would read a lot more like Labyrinth in quite a few scenes and motivations, and even might be in the same Doctor, I don't know. So it felt like it was retreading already established material. It was set more in the Aliens books universe. So we've got Earth Hive, Nightmare Asylum, Female War, Genocide, and this certainly is a continuation from Genocide, because it mentions the main pharmaceutical company in Genocide. Okay, there's a thing that happens at the end. There's a new xenomorph that's created, but we kind of seen something similar to that in Alien Resurrection. And it's quite different in a lot of ways, but it's the same sort of idea. Even to the various tanks filled with failed previous experiments. But the artwork, I really don't like that type of artwork. It's really poor. I said it was worth reading, but it was more of a disappointment than anything else. I've subsequently picked up the novel, so I'll give that a go at some point. But obviously I don't know whether The Labyrinth or this one came first. I think it came first by a couple of months, actually. But they were just too similar. After that, I then read Every Hearted Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This is book one of Wayward Children. I read this to my wife. This is a novella, and it's about children who have stepped through a wardrobe or a portal, put on the magic sock, whatever it is, and found themselves in a different world on a new adventure. And then they've come home having completed that adventure and readjusting back to real life. And of course, how do you do that? You can't. And so there's a special school set up for those who just want to go back to their magical world where everything was normal for them. And it's just trying to teach them to readjust to the fact that they're now in the real world again. Suck it up. Well, actually, it's kinder than that. But, it's a readjustment story for children. And we follow Nancy as she joins this school, as she meets her roommate and various other children who have gone through similar but very different experiences to her own. A few people go to the same magical world, of course. And she's sort of missing the play, and then someone gets murdered. Who's safe, who's doing it, and why. I didn't get it straight away, but I did twig a little while before it was revealed who it was, so I was pleased with that. It was okay. I think it was a bit short to really invest in any of the characters or the world that's been built here. Some nice ideas in it, but I suppose it was worth reading. And after that, I then read Star Wars Survivor's Quest by Timothy Zahn. Way back when the Galactic Republic sent out a colony ship to go and search the stars, discover new life forms, and find what happened to a missing Jedi. And Thrawn intercepts it and blows it up, basically. The ruins of this failed venture has been discovered by the Chiss, and newly married Luke and Mara get a message saying, come and see, we found this funky thing for you to look at. And the story is split into two main sections. One is the journey there, as they're on this ship. It's them. There's a fake New Republic representative who intercepted the message for Luke, who's got his own ulterior motives to going. The Empire of the Hand, an Imperial remnant who are separate to the Republic but not at war with. They are their own independent thing. And a group of aliens who wish to come and give their thanks to the Outbound Flight project for saving them way back when from the tyranny of their evil alien overlords. And while they're doing this journey over to where Outbound Flight sits, stuff happens on this ship. There's acts of sabotage, theft, and of course nobody's really there for reasons that they claim, apart from Luke and Mara. And I found that bit was sort of interesting, but overly long and unresolved at that moment. Obviously, events further on and towards the end of the book call back to what happens on the ship and why they happened in the first place. But it's a bit of an ongoing mystery, like an Agatha Christie story, but without any resolution until much, much later in the second part of the story, where they've got to Outbound Flight and things happen there. Cursed your sudden but inevitable betrayal sort of things, as well as a few surprises. Really enjoyed this. I do enjoy Timothy Zahn's expansions of the Star Wars universe. However, there's a lot of reaching out to the Force, stretching out to the Force mentioned. You could have a drinking game every time that Luke or Mara stretches out to the Force. You'd be paralytic by about page 50. And there's a character introduced here and a scenario, a situation that's introduced here surrounding this character and others like her that I felt could have been resolved better, or rather resolved at all. I mean, she's a great character. It would have been nice to see more of her. I did go to Wikipedia and know this is her only appearance, and it's a shame because I think there was a lot of potential with her, and certainly it would be nice to have seen some resolution to the situation that she was in. But no, the story's finished and we'll move on. So there we go. But yeah, worth buying. And after that I then read Aliens vs Predator vs the Terminator. Now I was really excited to finally get hold of a copy of this. These graphic novels are not particularly easy to find, and so quite excited to read about a clash between three of cinema's greatest baddies. The story follows Cole from Alien Resurrection as she goes to Earth to find Ripley, the alien-human hybrid version of Ripley anyway, because the humans are at it again. They're back to growing xenomorphs. Let's go and stop them. And so they go to a space station with mad scientists growing aliens. Sounds kind of familiar. We haven't had that storyline before. Only for the mad scientist to turn out to be a Terminator, who's creating a Terminator alien hybrid. And so Ripley and Cole and the other humans that they've got with them have to do battle against these things to stop the end of the universe, effectively, because of the unstoppable nature of a Xeno-Terminator thing. Oh yeah, the Predators are in there as well, but they're just there. They turn up, they do something, and doesn't change anything at all. It's very much aliens versus Terminator, or rather humans versus an alien Terminator mashup with predators jumping around, not really being involved whatsoever. Well, they are, but not effectively. It's felt like a missed opportunity. I was again quite disappointed with this one. Quite a thin tome as well. I mean, if you're going to talk about combining three of cinema's greatest things, at least make an effort. And the art style was also extremely cartoony. So, and that was a bit of a letdown as well, particularly when you look at the gritty front cover. I think I would have preferred that kind of artwork in this story. It wasn't terrible, but it doesn't even do what it claims on the front cover, to be honest. I mean, how many times do we need to have a mad scientist in a space station blending xenomorphs with something? Can we not have a new story idea than that old thing? Apparently not. Okay, he wasn't a mad scientist, he was a Terminator. That makes it completely different. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I've got it, because, like I say, these are very rare. Look after it. But I expected more from it. Let's just put it like that. And after that I then read Doctor Who, Touched by an Angel by Jonathan Morris. The angels are back, this time in book form. Hooray! Where the Doctor, Rory and Amy find themselves on Earth helping a guy called Mark, who's been sent back in time, but only by 30 years. So, set during the 90s. Yes, going back 30 years only gets you to the 90s. We're old. So there's lots of 90s references to films, TV, music, clothing, shops. So if you have a 90s nostalgia need, this is a great feast for 90s nostalgia. Yeah, so the angels send it back for 30 years because they're up to something different this time. They've got another cunning plan to do something cunning with cunningly. And of course, Dr. Rory and Amy have to try and work out what the angels are up to and stop them. So we get a really good tale here. There's a fantastic sequence right at the beginning with the initial attack with Mark, following an angel in security cameras, or in the monitors of security cameras, where he looks up, he sees the monitor and he sees the angel behind him, turns around, there's nothing there, he then looks back and the angel's moved closer. So it uses a little bit from the two parts angel story. The image of an angel becomes itself an angel, and that was a really, really interesting concept. This is my pinnacle Doctor Who team up. Matt, Karen and Arthur made a really good trio on the TARDIS. And in my opinion, this is as good as Doctor Who ever got on the screen. And I'm enjoying the books as well. Yeah, it's a solid story. The ending was a little bit reminiscent of Blink. They kind of do the same trick again. It's slightly different, but it was a bit of a letdown. I suppose there's only so many ways you can defeat angels. And I think the only other issue was the story material itself, because Mark loses his wife to a car accident. And of course is sent back in time with the idea that he could perhaps change events to rescue her from the inevitable accident, creating a paradox, which of course the Doctor is trying to stop. And a lot of the book just deals with the younger original version of Mark as he meets his girlfriend and of course meets the woman who then becomes his wife, and their relationship as they go through the various eras, as the older Mark looks on and tries interfering at various points and sometimes having to put it back on the line that they're supposed to have been on in the first place. And so we do get bogged down with a lot of the minutiae of Mark's life and the life of his wife to be, sort of just cementing home the importance of this relationship, which makes the decisions he has to make that much harder, I suppose, as a reader, because we're more invested in these two as a couple. But there was not much Doctor Whoing going on while that was happening, to be honest, and I think it would be nice to have seen more from our team rather than Mark's life story. But anyway, worth buying. And after that I then read, and that's all 13 books. Yay! So, not a bad month. A few disappointments, but mostly successes. On to the TBR. So first up is my book of the month, The Night House by Joan Nesbo. This looks to be a horror. I don't read much horror really, so the front cover looked quite cool, so I'll give that a go. Basically, a 14-year-old boy witnesses his classmate being eaten by the telephone and of course isn't believed, and so he has to try and clear his name. Meanwhile, another boy goes missing. So it's that sort of story. Man eating telephone. Exciting. And after that I'll read Wilt by Tom Sharp. This is book 1 of the Wilt series of books. These follow poor Henry Wilt, who goes through life from one disaster and misunderstanding to the next. And he is trapped in a dead-end job with no view of promotion, and he's trapped in a dead-end marriage to a feather-brained wife, and he's contemplating murdering her while he walks the dog. Events come to a point where it's like, well, I'm going to have to do something about it now, and he practices her murder on a inflatable doll, or rather he sees about disposing of the body with this doll and dumps it down a building site hole near his place of work. Unfortunately, his wife actually goes missing. She goes off on a holiday with some friends of hers. They turn out to be a bit weird, and so she somehow gets away from them, but is generally missing. The friends don't want to admit what they've been up to, so they won't say that they've had anything to do with her. And so there's a body down the hole, so it appears, and Wilt looks like he's murdered his wife, even though he hasn't. He's only practiced. So full of sexual misadventures and farcical misunderstandings. I remember this being really funny last time, looking forward to rereading it. And once I've done that, I'll then move on to The Jar of Mystery. Ooh. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of books that aren't on any of my normal reading piles, so I've got some in here as well. Once I can get into it. And so, for this month, I shall be reading on this piece of paper. Oh, excitement. The Expanse. Ooh, that's a reread. Yeah, so that'll be book 2 of The Expanse, Caliban's War. I read book 1 about 5 years ago on the plane to Florida. So yeah, absolutely love the series. TV show is really good as well. Introduces the Martian soldier Bobby as her platoon is slaughtered by something, and a little girl is kidnapped by a scientist, and James Holden and the crew of the Rocinante take on the job to try and find her. And meanwhile, the alien proto-molecule, having crash-landed on Venus, is up to something. So good. Looking forward to rereading this one. And once I've done that, I'll then move on to some point horror. We're reading these sort of chronologically as we've got them, and I happen to be rereading all 3 of the books of this omnibus. So there's Freeze Tag by Caroline B. Cooney, The Fever by Diane Ho, and The Cemetery by D.E. Atkins. I think that's the order I'm doing them in. But anyway, that's all those. The point horrors have been okay-ish so far. I've not been hugely impressed with them, but there's 3 more chances and 3 different authors. So, yeah, good chance of something reasonably good in that. I once got through that. There's quite a lot now, isn't there? And then moving on to my favourite book of all time, The Watchers of the Dark by Lloyd Biggle Jr. This book 2 of the Jan Darzek series. So excited to reread this one. Been a long time, and my dad's very keen on me rereading it because he wants his copy back. I've had this a while now. There is a alien confederacy or galactic empire or some sort of galactic civilization out there somewhere, which we're not included with because we're too young and stupid. But planet after planet are falling to the dark, and the aliens send a representative to Earth to grab one Jan Darzak, private investigator, to come and do some investigating to find out just what's going on. He has had some experience with aliens from the events of the first book, All the Colours of Darkness, but they've wiped his brain so he doesn't remember it, but I'm sure that can be reversed. Fantastic space adventure, murder mystery, and indeed it may not be clear, but on this cover alone, a murder has just taken place. There's a body floating outside in space there. Can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to reading that one. Okay, that's my main reading. Graphic novel wise, I've got Ms. Marvel, Fists of Justice on the go at the moment. Following Ms. Marvel, obviously, as she teams up with the Wolverine, Moon Knight and Venom on 3 separate adventures which are all connected somehow. I've only read the first one so far, so I don't know what the connection is. So there's that, and then after that, I'm then going to move on to some more Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We picked up a couple more copies. My wife thought she had it all. It turned out she doesn't, and so we filled in 2 of the 3 gaps that we know about. So there's Spike and Drew, set way back when. There's a novel, Spike and Drew, Pretty Maids in a Row, which I've already read. This one I think will probably be in a similar sort of vein to that. And Note from the Underground, which I think from the main series of Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novels is the last one before season 8 graphic novels take place. And currently to my wife I am reading A Curse of Krakens by Kevin Hahn. This is the 3rd book of the 7 Kennings, continuing and possibly concluding the trilogy, if it is indeed a trilogy. I guess it's I presume it's a trilogy of this world where bone giants and fire giants have invaded the mainland, and there's various politicking and infighting amongst the various factions of the world as well. And amongst all this, a young man has discovered the 7th Kenning, a Kenning being like a magical ability. So there's one where you can be make things grow. There's one when you can interact with water in a special way. There's one of having perfect memory. I can't remember the other 3. There's a healing one. Anyway, he discovers one where you can control animals and talk to animals and things like that. And the ramifications of that's going to be on the world in some way. Really great stuff, told from several points of view, but all tied together so that they don't feel disconnected. It's quite a clever way of doing it. Really good series so far, absolutely loving it. Just started it, so it's going to take a little while to get through it. Can't see any way we're going to get this done by the end of the year. And there we go. Wow, that was a lot. So, how was your reading for November? What's your plans for December? Yeah, let me know in the comments below. And please, as usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then keep it to yourself. Thank you, and until next time, see you later.